Logline. At an opulent wedding, the bride's snobbish family dismisses the groom's plainly dressed grandmother, only to be utterly humiliated when a billionaire reveals her true identity as a legendary philanthropist and business mogul. The gilded afternoon sun bathes a luxurious estate in suburban Connecticut. Expansive gardens are meticulously manicured for the most anticipated high society wedding of the season. Pristine white roses line the cobblestone path, and dazzling crystal chandeliers hang from ancient oak trees, creating an atmosphere of extravagant yet refined elegance. Guests, clad in designer dresses and expensive tailored suits, sip premium champagne, exchanging tales of lavish vacations and multi-million-dollar deals. At the heart of the event are Olivia Vanderbilt, the stunning bride, and Michael Johnson, her soon-to-be husband. Their love story is the talk of the elite circles. Olivia, the heiress of an old-money, influential East Coast business dynasty, and Michael, a remarkably successful self-made tech entrepreneur with admirable drive. But today, amidst the picturesque setting and celebratory air, something far less romantic is quietly unfolding. Evelyn Johnson steps out of a sleek black sedan with the help of Michael, her grandson. Soft silver hair frames a face etched with time, but radiating quiet dignity and kindness. Dressed in a simple yet elegant navy blue dress, she carries herself with grace, her warm brown eyes scanning the crowd with a gentle smile. She has waited a long time for this moment, to see her grandson marry the love of his life. However, as she moves through the sea of finery, a harsh reality becomes clear. The Vanderbilt family barely acknowledges her presence. Victoria. Vanderbilt, the bride's mother, stands near the main entrance, wine glass in hand, observing Evelyn with an almost imperceptible sneer. She turns to a relative, whispering just loud enough for those nearby to hear. I suppose some people don't understand the difference between formal wear and everyday attire. A few forced chuckles follow. Evelyn hears it, but her composure remains unshaken. She has faced far worse in her life. Richard Vanderbilt, the bride's father, offers Evelyn only a curt nod, without extending a hand or a word of welcome. To him, she is just another guest, a background figure. The rest of the Vanderbilt clan follows suit, exchanging judgmental glances, subtly steering conversations away whenever Evelyn approaches. Michael notices, his jaw tightening, but Evelyn places a reassuring hand on his arm. It's all right, dear, she murmurs. Some lessons take time. As the reception progresses, the microaggressions become more pronounced. When Evelyn sits at a table, other guests subtly shift their chairs away. When she attempts polite conversation, the responses are often clipped, dismissive. At one point, as she reaches for an hors d'oeuvre from a passing server's tray, Victoria barely masks a grimace. Michael's heart aches for his grandmother, but he knows her well enough to recognize the quiet confidence she carries. She is not rattled. She has encountered this type of person before. What the Vanderbilts don't know, what they are about to learn the hard way, is that Evelyn Johnson is no ordinary woman, and before the night is over, they will be desperate for her forgiveness. The reception is in full swing, a glittering display of wealth and privilege. Champagne glasses clink, and guests' laughter echoes across the sprawling gardens. Waiters in crisp white uniforms glide through the crowd, expertly balancing trays of fine wine and gourmet canapes. The Vanderbilts move effortlessly among the upper crust, basking in their own self-assured glow. But beneath the opulence and celebration, an undercurrent of snobbery taints the air. Evelyn Johnson sits at a round table near the edge of the main reception area, her presence politely ignored by most of Olivia's family. She watches how they flatter the other guests. The distinguished judge, the CEO of a luxury fashion brand, a tech tycoon who flew in from the West Coast just for the party. They lavish attention on these individuals, laughing too loudly at their jokes, hanging on their every word. But when it comes to Evelyn, she might as well be invisible. Victoria Vanderbilt, seated at a nearby table, swirls the deep red wine in her glass before leaning towards a group of relatives. Her lips curve into a practiced smile, her voice smooth but laced with sharpness. Michael turned out quite well considering his background, she remarks loud enough for Evelyn to overhear. Evelyn looks up from her teacup but says nothing. She has lived too long to be swayed by careless words. Michael, standing a few steps away, stiffens. He glances at Olivia, expecting her to react, to say something, but Olivia hesitates, biting her lip. It's their wedding day, and she doesn't want to make a scene. Evelyn gently touches her grandson's arm, a silent reminder, not yet. At another table, Richard Vanderbilt holds court among his closest associates. A man of power and influence, he has spent his life making decisions that shape industries. He speaks in a low, authoritative tone, and when he makes a joke, everyone laughs, whether it's funny or not. Now he entertains the table with a casual remark about how certain traditions have become rather outdated. His words, though wrapped in sophistication, carry an unmistakable weight. The implication is clear. There are old customs, and then there are better customs, the ones people of their class adhere to. The Vanderbilt way. Michael clenches his fists. His family has traditions too, traditions of resilience, strength, and unity. His grandmother, sitting just meters away, is living proof of that. But Richard doesn't even acknowledge her existence. Still, Evelyn remains composed. She has weathered far worse storms in her life. Disrespect from small-minded people is nothing new. Instead of reacting with anger, she responds with grace, offering quiet, insightful observations throughout the evening. When one guest comments on the challenges of wealth management, Evelyn smiles gently. True wealth isn't measured in numbers, but in how you treat people. When someone else scoffs at the idea of humble beginnings, she simply remarks, "You'd be surprised how much greatness comes from places people choose to ignore." The Vanderbilts barely register her words, but one man does. Across the reception area, an older, impeccably dressed gentleman sits alone, observing. He has sharp eyes, the kind that miss nothing, and an air of quiet authority. His tailored suit, though simple, hints at understated wealth, and his bearing suggests he is no ordinary guest. He watches Victoria turn up her nose at Evelyn. He hears the condescending tone in Richard's voice. He sees how guests subtly keep their distance from the older black woman at the edge of the table, and he is not impressed. Evelyn, sensing his gaze, meets his eyes for a brief moment and offers a knowing smile. Something is about to shift, and soon the Vanderbilts will realize the woman they dismissed is not someone to be ignored. The reception continues, the Vanderbilts immersed in their carefully curated social circle, oblivious to the impending shift. Soft classical music provides a backdrop to polite conversation, punctuated by the clinking of glasses as guests toast the happy couple. Then the event coordinator steps onto the small stage at the center of the reception area, tapping the microphone lightly. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announces, her voice carrying across the open space, It is my distinct honor to introduce a very special guest this evening, an individual whose contributions to business, philanthropy, and social change have left an indelible mark on this country. Please join me in welcoming our guest of honor. A ripple of excitement goes through the crowd. Olivia's family sits up straighter. The Vanderbilts pride themselves on their elite circle, and a guest of this caliber could only enhance their prestige. The older, impeccably dressed gentleman, who had been watching the night's events from a distance, finally rises. All eyes turn to him. The air crackles with anticipation as whispers spread among the guests. But what happens next sends a seismic shock through the Vanderbilt family. Instead of heading toward the podium, the distinguished man turns on his heel and walks directly towards Evelyn Johnson. A hush falls over the crowd as he approaches the elderly woman with a warm, genuine smile. And then he offers a slight, respectful bow. "Madame Carter," he says, his voice filled with profound reverence. "It has been far too long." Note, retaining Carter as a core detail of the revealed wealth Sharn legacy, possibly a maiden name or the name of a business empire she built. Audible gasps ripple through the attendees. "Madam Carter?" His tone, the deferential gesture. This isn't a casual acquaintance. This is admiration. Evelyn, still seated, looks up into his eye with a knowing smile. "Ah, William," she says softly, "you haven't changed a bit." The Vanderbilts are frozen. William Sterling. The name finally clicks in their minds. Not just a wealthy businessman, a billionaire, a man whose name carries weight across global industries, who has built empires, funded institutions, and changed lives. And here he is, showing deep respect to the older black woman they had so carelessly dismissed. Richard, ever the businessman, extends a hand towards Evelyn, a forced smile plastered on his face. "Well, Madam Carter, what an honor. Perhaps we could discuss." Evelyn simply looks at his outstretched hand. Then with effortless grace, she turns away, dismissing the entire exchange. It is a snub more potent than any words could convey. The Vanderbilts were accustomed to power, to wealth, to commanding attention in any room they entered. But tonight, they learned a lesson they could never erase. Status means nothing when it's built on arrogance and ignorance. Evelyn, ever composed, doesn't gloat. She doesn't demand apologies or revel in their humiliation. Instead, she simply smiles and returns to her seat, enjoying her dessert as if nothing significant happened. Because that was the difference between them. True dignity wasn't in wealth, nor in power. It was in character. And tonight, the Vanderbilts had shown they possessed none. The music has swelled again, the wedding guests slowly resuming their conversations, though a palpable shift hangs in the air. The luxurious estate still glows under the soft evening light. But the Vanderbilts are no longer basking in an illusion of superiority. Victoria and Richard sit stiffly at their table, their earlier arrogance replaced by an uncomfortable silence. Their easy charm, the polished smiles they deployed at high society functions, has been stripped away. They are exposed not just to their guests, but to themselves. For the first time in years, they are forced to reflect. Had they truly built their lives around the shallow idea that wealth dictates worth? Victoria's gaze drifts towards Evelyn, who sits gracefully at a nearby table, chatting with the billionaire guest who revealed her legacy. There is a serenity about her, a quiet dignity that no amount of money could buy. Richard clenches his jaw, watching his guests now flock towards Evelyn, eager to speak with her, to shake her hand. The very woman they had dismissed is now, effortlessly, the center of the room. And that is the most bitter pill to swallow. Olivia has spent the evening caught between two worlds, her love for Michael and her loyalty to the family that raised her. But now there is no hesitation. She turns to Michael, shame clear in her eyes. "I am so sorry," she whispers. "I should have said something sooner. I should have stopped them." Michael looks at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he takes her hand, his warmth reassuring. "That wasn't your burden to carry, Olivia, but what matters is what happens next." She nods, gripping his hand tighter. "Then I promise you this. Our marriage will not be built on the ignorance I saw tonight. I won't let prejudice define our family." Evelyn, overhearing, offers Olivia a knowing smile. "That's a good start, dear. Change isn't in words, it's in actions." Olivia meets her gaze directly and nods. "I'll prove it." As the evening draws to a close, the Vanderbilts fade to the background, no longer the untouchable elites they had imagined themselves to be. They have been humbled. Whether they will change remains to be seen. But one thing is certain, they will never forget this day. Because respect isn't found in wealth or status, it's found in how you treat others. And sometimes the person you look down on today might just be the one who commands the entire room tomorrow. Victoria's wine glass nearly slips from her grasp. Richard's confident smirk evaporates. Olivia, her mouth slightly agape, looks back and forth between Evelyn and William Sterling, trying to absorb what is unfolding before her. William gestures, capturing the crowd's attention. "Many of you know me as a businessman, a philanthropist, but I would be nothing without one person, the woman sitting right here, Evelyn Carter." Silence hangs heavy. He turns to Evelyn, nodding warmly. "Madame Carter is one of the greatest minds of our time. Decades ago, she built a business empire from the ground up, shattering every barrier placed before her. She has dedicated her life to philanthropy, funding countless scholarships for underprivileged students, ensuring that generations after her had the opportunities once denied to people like us." A collective murmur of awe spreads through the crowd. Some guests exchange guilty glances, suddenly recalling their dismissive behavior towards the older woman. Others simply stare, mouths open, their entire perception of the evening shifting in real time. William continues, his voice resonating through the stunned assembly. "She didn't just create wealth. She built legacies. She mentored leaders, invested in communities, and opened doors for those who found them slammed shut." The weight of his words settles over the Vanderbilt family like a harsh truth. The very woman they treated as their inferior was a titan in her own right, wealthier, more influential than any of them could ever hope to be. Richard Vanderbilt swallows hard. His entire career revolved around wealth, power, and knowing the right people. Yet the one person he ignored, no, disrespected, was someone far beyond his reach. Victoria, still reeling, attempts to regain her composure. She forces a brittle smile, leaning towards Evelyn. "Oh, we had no idea," she begins, her voice laced with a nervous, false laugh. Evelyn turns to her, her gaze steady, unwavering. "I know," she replies simply. And in that moment, Victoria understands the crushing weight of her own arrogance. Michael, who had bitten his tongue all evening, now stands a little straighter, pride for his grandmother shining in his eyes. As for Olivia, she has never felt so ashamed. The night began with the Vanderbilts treating Evelyn as an outsider, someone who didn't belong in their world. But by the end of it, They realize it is they who are unworthy of being in hers. The grand estate, once filled with laughter and the clinking of champagne glasses, is now thick with hushed whispers. The revelation has sent shockwaves through the crowd, and Olivia's family stands frozen under the weight of their own snobbery. Victoria's face has lost its practiced elegance. The careful makeup cannot mask the sheer mortification washing over her. She clutches her wine glass, fingers trembling slightly as she tries to process the truth. Richard Vanderbilt, the man who prided himself on being the most powerful person in the room, looks as though he's been physically struck. His entire world revolved around knowing the right people, being in the right circles. But the one person he dismissed without a thought was the one whose respect truly mattered. The realization is more painful than any public humiliation. The guests, now acutely aware of the offense that occurred, steal glances at Evelyn. Some look ashamed, others curious. A few murmur apologies under their breath, though not directed at her, more like self-reproach for their silent complicity. Michael, who endured the evening out of respect for his grandmother, finally steps forward. His voice is calm but firm, cutting through the heavy silence. "It's funny, isn't it?" he says, glancing at Olivia's parents. "You were so concerned with status, so worried about appearances, yet you just disrespected the most important person in this room." Victoria and Richard flinch visibly. Michael lets out a breath, shaking his head. "All evening, you treated my grandmother like she didn't belong, like she wasn't good enough. Yet she has done more, built more, given more than almost everyone in this room combined." Olivia, standing beside him, swallows hard. She can feel the heat rising in her face, born not just of vicarious embarrassment, but of the painful awareness that her family had revealed their true colors in the ugliest way possible. Victoria attempts damage control, forcing a strained smile. "Dear Evelyn," she begins, her tone suddenly sickly sweet, "I truly had no idea. You really should have said something sooner. We would have—" Evelyn raises a hand, cutting her off. "There was nothing to say," she replies softly, her voice calm but unyielding. "A person's worth isn't determined by what they tell you. It's revealed in how you treat them." Victoria's mouth opens, then closes. She has no response.